Yo there guys, this is Cob, and as requested by a lot of people, this is going to be a 2v2 talk-through video. I'm going to be showing a few games of Destruction Warlock Healer. In these games, I'm going to be playing with a Resto Druid, but any tips you might pick up in this video can be applied to almost any DPS healer setup in 2v2s. So very quickly, I want to brush over talents. Here you can see my spec is pretty standard, only I've spec'd into Mortal Coil. If you're playing with a mage, druid, rogue, or anyone who has a stun pretty much, you should definitely be speccing into Mortal Coil almost always. This is just to avoid stuns DRing of course, and you can chain the horror effect from your coil tastily with any stuns your partner might have. So this first game is against another caster healer comp, which usually means a long game. We'll be targeting the Resto Druid here, and this is because if he has no trinket or bark skin, he can easily be killed, and that is however as long as we have his priest CC'd while we burst. I also feel Shadow Priests are much more slippery kill targets, with Dispersion on a pretty low cooldown and abilities like their random little stealth. They're pretty hard to burst on for Destro Locks. So we are about 10 minutes into the game at this point, and here I perform an awful burst attempt. What we should be doing here is combining my druid's bash and my spell lock and mortal coil to force the druid's trinket and bark skin, and then we can kill him before he gets these cooldowns back. But it's also important of course to have the priest CC'd so he can't help his partner out. I find it's awesome if your healer can take care of CCing the other target while you focus on bursting the kill target. However, right here the druid's bark skin is about to come back off of cooldown and he still has his trinket, so when I go Rambo mode here with my Dark Soul, it's actually a big waste. I should have saved it for a more clear-cut opportunity, and to top it off, the priest also trinkets the cyclone my healer put him in to grip his druid to the pillar, which creates the careliest chaos bolt ever recorded. So the druid gets away from my big damage cooldowns having only used bark skin, which is obviously pretty terrible for us. Now here not a lot is going on because we are basically waiting for cooldowns like Mortal Coil and Bash to come back so we can burst the druid again. We are also talking about how we can CC the priest when we swap onto the druid again. I run back to the start here just to put up a new gateway, as I can see the priest is dotting up my current one, and right about now you're going to see the difference in this burst attempt. This time, after I catch the enemy druid in a fear, my druid is able to NS clone the priest, and he doesn't have a trinket this time. We communicate how we're going to lock the druid down. I start with a Mortal Coil into a spell lock, and my druid is going to follow this up with his bash. And now without even using Dark Soul, we actually force bark skin and trinket from the druid this time. So now we know we can win this game very soon. All we need to do is survive and wait for our lockdown cooldowns to come back one more time. Spells like Spell Lock, Coil and Bash. Then with some more CC on the priest, we should be able to get the druid down before his bark skin and trinket come back up. Again, I start with a fear to get him right out into the open, then I'm going to pop all of my offensive cooldowns while my druid lands a cyclone onto his priest. The druid gets put into a maim stun while I'm lobbing damage into him. I unbound Will, the priest silence, and I manage to double coil them both just as he grips his druid to the tomb. And that is going to lock both of them down for just long enough to finish off the druid. So I'm just going to skim through this second game. We're up against Holy Paladin Windwalker Monk, and it's pretty similar to the first, only I've switched out of Mortal Coil and into Howl of Terror here. I do this because we knew we'd be relying on double CC a lot to land our damage, and because I expect the monk to be hitting me for a lot of the game, which of course reduces Howl's cooldown. Our main target will be the Holy Paladin. Once we force his bubble and trinket, we should be able to kill him, just like we killed the druid in the first game, by keeping him locked down with stuns and silences, and of course by controlling his partner while we burst. So right here you're going to see a pretty weak attempt again, this time to force the paladin's bubble. It starts out great. I land a double Howl of Terror on the monk and the paladin, allowing me to free cast my damage. Then I'm going to spell lock the Pala out of this. But the mistake here was in communication. What I should have done was asked my druid if he could bash the paladin out of the fear, and then I could have followed up with a spell lock. My druid though wasn't prepared to land the bash, so the paladin is going to get away pretty easily. Now, right here, all we are doing is waiting for our cooldowns again so we can have another go at forcing the bubble from the paladin. And that's all we're aiming to do. Notice the huge amount of nothing that I'm actually doing right here. I'm shooting out basic damage, kiting around using my portals, and this is because I don't want to use any cooldowns at all while we are not pushing to force cooldowns on the Paladin. I want to save all of my burst and CC for the next best attempt. So this is when it actually comes around now. I lock the Paladin out here and I howl them both just like before, but this time around I'm calling for my Druid to land his bash on the Paladin. He does it and I have a spell lock out of this, so we are easily going to force the bubble this time. So basically, instead of trying to go Rambo mode on my own, all I did was line up a stun lock with my partner, and by doing so we forced a bubble and I didn't even pop Dark Soul. Now I see in my Vile cooldowns add-on that the Paladin has no trinket or bubble, but his trinket is coming off really soon, so I know that we have to be quick here. I land a Howl of Terror on both of them again. I pop Dark Soul and my Unending Resolve to immune any interrupts. The Monk, I think, Nibble brews the fear, but he can only lock me down so much because of Unending Resolve. Again, my Druid is helping me to keep the healer locked down using his stuns, and we are always communicating so we don't overlap. For example, a spell lock and a bash. We need to stop the Paladin from casting for the maximum amount of time. And as you can see, he goes down here, so again it's all about landing the double CC, bursting well and often to force key cooldowns, and then going for the kill. Now this last game is going to be against a common type of double DPS comp, and that is Hunter Melee, in this case Hunter Ret. Now if you watch my demon guide, you'll probably already know that this is a prime opportunity to sacrifice the Imp Pet. This is going to let me dispel my Druid from Hodges and Hunter traps. I'm mostly going to be targeting the Hunter, as past his 2 deterrences, he really doesn't have much to keep himself up. A Paladin is also easier to CC than a Hunter, who pretty much has 2 trinkets, being the M-Spec. So this is an immensely fast-paced game compared to the other 2 we've seen so far, and right away they're on me, so I Havoc the Hunter and coil them both, which the Paladin trinkets. In the meantime, my healer has been scattered, so I'm ready to dispel him, but I end up just eating the trap the old-fashioned way. The Paladin then pops all of his offensive cooldowns on me, so I'm instantly going to respond to that with an Unending Resolve to mitigate some of his burst. Then with the Aura Mastery effect, I'm going to lob a fear onto him, and I know that this is big because he's already used his trinket this early on, so he has to bubble this fear. And this means that we can CC the Ret pretty much for the rest of the game. You see my Druid puts him into a Cyclone here while I try and maintain basic damage onto the Hunter. Again, I'm ready to dispel my healer when he calls that he's scattered, but again, I'm close enough to just nom the trap manually. Out of this, we are pretty much looking to take the win already. We know that we can CC the Paladin forever, and even though the Hunter still has both deterrences, we know that we can push in as they've already blown all of their big offensive CDs. I double coil them, fearing the Paladin off of that, and the deterrences start coming now thick and fast. Now it's just a matter of keeping this damage up on the Hunter and dispelling any CCs that land onto my healer. Against double DPS when playing healer DPS, so much I feel comes down to the opener. Against double melee DPS like this team, I find it's best to open with a hell of a lot of CC, as it's going to stop them getting the early momentum. And it might sound simple, but don't be afraid to pop big defensive cooldowns as soon as you see their big offensive cooldowns. Just make sure that you communicate this to your healer so you don't overlap too much. Anyways, that will be all for this video. I do hope you enjoyed it. Maybe found a couple of the tips useful. If there's a comp that you play often as Destro in 2v2s, let me know in the comments and I can try and get some games of it recorded and make a similar style video again sometime. But for now, thanks for watching and I will see you all in the next video.